distance more. And so those are the things that I think we have to focus in on, and in light of what we're dealing with in this country today. Thank you.
Mr. Tariq Shabazz, what do you view as the most pressing issue facing the LGBTQIA+ community?
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, number one, for inviting me onto this amazing event. But to answer the question, I want to say this right now is that we have to really change the way that we're viewing things in America. The way that we're viewing our lenses of how we're viewing the issues that are impacting people of all people, of whether it's sexual orientation, gender identity. America, we are doing a very terrible job. And for me, I want to say that I believe it would be a little bit monolithic of me to say what I perceive is the greatest or most impactful thing towards the LGBTQI+ community. But what I do want to say specifically is the things that I know of the myriad of issues that are impacting the said community is the fact that we're dealing with transgender bills popping up all over our state legislators. The fact that we're dealing with the absolute amount of discrimination when it comes to housing, the impact that we're having in terms of the hate crimes that keep arising. The fact of the matter is that we're actively discussing policies on the basis of the Equality Act. That I can't even believe the fact that we have to say that we should add in that information to the Civil Rights Act, and not because I think that it's wrong. It's because of the fact that it should have already been recognized. And that's why I say right now we need to bring a new perspective to Congress. And I believe that myself, as Tariq K. Shabazz, as your next congressman, that I will work diligently. I stated this before, that I will have a liaison within my office. I will make sure that I am always working to be the best advocate that I can be as the next congressperson. I want to ensure that we are really highlighting the impact of the healthcare disparities. The fact that we had to go through a military that had a don't ask, don't tell policy that was just outlawed not too long ago. The fact that we have to see a Supreme Court ruling that states that there's a 14th Amendment right to same-sex marriages. The fact that we even have to have these discussions mean that we aren't doing things fundamentally right, so we need to do things fundamentally different. And that's why I say that I can't tell you exactly what is the ultimate impact or the largest, most impacting thing to the LGBTQI+ community. But one thing I can say is, of the myriad of things, that I will be the candidate as the next congressman who will tackle them. Thank you.
Representative John Barnes, what do you view as the most pressing issue facing the LGBTQIA+ community?
Equality and the laws that exclude any American from discriminatory practices merely because the language excludes certain parts of it is discriminatory. And that should not be in American society in areas of housing, healthcare, credit loans, federal programs. And because it doesn't specify or simply say that this, that, or the other should happen, should not be discriminatory, because we live in an American society where everyone is to be treated equal. And I think that not only is it discriminatory, but it's a form of human rights that is extremely important for us to consider in these times. Many families, many individuals have folks who are from the LGBTQ community, a transgender community, and those are individuals who should not be discriminated based on who they love or who they choose to be around simply because of that. So the equality question is something that has to be focused on in public policy, and we need to set forth certain parameters that will make sure that people have that equality in life.
Thank you. Senator Shirley Smith was supposed to be with us tonight, and we are not seeing her in the panelists or the attendees. So we are going to move on to our next question, and we might have the senator pop on with us. So I'm going to now introduce Susan Palmer, who is with an executive board member of the Cuyahoga Democratic Women's Caucus, to ask our next question.
Good evening. The United States is one of the few countries in the world who fails to guarantee paid family leave for all workers. The Democratic Party platform supports guaranteeing paid family leave, but many Democratic Party plans differ. What paid family leave program do you envision? Mr. Tariq Shabazz?
Oh, can
There
you
you
hear me
go.
now? I
Yep.
was talking a little bit. Okay, so number one, I want to say that I think that this is a very important question. The fact that we need to be highlighting that so many mothers, so many husbands, spouses and families are went through one of the most difficult times throughout this pandemic, where we saw so many people leaving the labor force, so many women leaving the labor force in large amounts with lack of care and services for child care services, things of that nature. I, as the next congressman, I will advocate for policies that push for longer specific times of paid vacation leave time that's more consistent with more of our developed states throughout the world, how other countries are doing these things. I also believe and perceive that we need to also improve the fact of our healthcare system in itself to make sure that we can have a more healthy family, a more healthy country, and more healthy people, so people can actually enjoy their lives a lot more. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough. That needs to definitely be talked about and expressed deeply. But that's all I have from there.
Thank you. Senator Nina Turner?
I believe I was on mute. I believe that paid family medical leave should be a cornerstone of this nation. And as Mr. Shabazz laid out briefly in his remarks, we definitely need to join other industrialized nations. I want to see us couple paid family medical leave with Medicare for all. When you talk about lifting the burdens of quality of life, those two things will do exactly that. And it's way past time that we do this in the United States of America. There's no reason why we should not do this. And when we think about people's quality of life and how much better it would be, especially for people who have to punch a clock for a living, to be able to know that they would have the type of job security necessary for them to be able to take care of themselves and or their family members, it would make them much better in the workplace. It would make their quality of life so much better too. And when we marry that with Medicare for all, that to me is a powerful combination. And there is no reason why on God's green earth that we should not do that. And it must be permanent. It must be deliberate. It must be deep. So the number of weeks that are necessary for people to rebound, it is so hard. And what happens to one person, and they may be able to rebound quicker than somebody else. And so we must, as a nation, take this on and say that this is part of the fabric of how we treat our employees. Poor people, the working poor and the barely middle class do deserve to be able to live a good life. They should not have to fear all the time that if one little tragedy happens to them, that they would lose their jobs. So I definitely, as a member of Congress and also someone who served in the Ohio legislature, firmly believe that we should have paid family medical leave and Medicare for all. They go together for me.
Thank you. Senator Jeff Johnson?
Thank you. I absolutely do support that we have within our country the paid family leave, where employers pay for an employee who goes home and takes care of a parent, takes care of a child, takes care of a loved one with serious medical conditions or very seriously ill. I think we have to recognize that has to be much more of an accepted part of the workplace. And not all employers want to do that. Without a doubt, the federal government has to make it easier for companies and for small businesses, particularly, to be able to do that. And I think we have to have a comprehensive approach to that. But without a doubt, it is I would vote for a requirement for every business to provide that. And of course, you have to have a partnership with the federal government to be able to deal with the costs and be able to do something and not just mandate it, but also have the ability for businesses to do it so that their employees can benefit from it. So I'm in full support of it, but I do know that the devil's in the details. We have to be able to sustain our business structure while we continue to support our employees.
Thank you. Councilwoman Chantel Brown?
Thank you. So I too certainly Well, I see Jeff's clock's time is still running, but I don't know if I should stop. So I too support a paid family medical leave act. I actually believe that the Biden-Harris administration introduced the idea of a 12-week paid medical family medical leave act, and that in addition to that, it would take into one of the things that we're dealing with. We're now we're in multi-generational homes where it's not an uncommon thing where a child is having to take care of the parent, and that also creates a burden on the family. But incorporating that family member to also be able to take care of themselves financially through the caregiving of their loved one. And so these are things that are becoming more prevalent, especially as our aging population continues to grow, and as we overcome and push towards the past the pandemic. Not just as it relates to moms, but again, caring for families who just have chronic health issues that put them in a position that they cannot both go to work and care for that loved one. So we absolutely need it. I would be in full support of it. And I hope that we can get to a place where it's beyond a discussion, but actually a realization, so that we can move towards a healthier society. And I think also putting in, giving consideration to things that will promote a healthier society will certainly reduce the need, but to address the immediate need, I would be in full support of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative John Barnes.
Yes, thank you. I support the Paid Family Medical Leave Act and making sure that people have access to assistance. I think that this again is a right that the United States government has a responsibility to ensure through legislation that will deal with that. As I have been crisscrossing this district, I met a young family that has a handicapped child that requires almost 24 hours a day care. And when those individuals run into situations with their job, in one instance, they almost lost the job because of the handicap and disabled care that these kids need. In addition to the fact that the personnel that is responsible for caring for them, coming and assisting them during that 24-hour period where they're not, some of them may not show up one night, which has an interruption in the natural flow of scheduling that is extremely important. So I think that in addition to what we have seen in proposals from the administration, I think that's extremely important to add value to these families that have these special situations where in some instances, not only children, but a parent or relative that comes in that requires that kind of care, so that in the area where these individuals live, we can develop workforce training that will provide access to the opportunities to help and assist them with care so that it goes without interruption, and can contribute.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Barnes. The next question, Crystal Bryant will do the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Good evening, panelists. We are very happy to be here with you this evening. So I'll be asking question 3. It is a 2-part question. If you all need me to repeat it after I unstate it the first time, please feel free to do so because it is rather lengthy. So here we go with question 3. Do you believe everyone has the right to access abortion care legally in their community without regard to ability to pay, without stigma, shame, or delay, and medically unnecessary barriers? Do you support federal legislation to ensure that right? We'll start with Senator Nina Turner.
Thank you, Crystal. I was still writing it down. Yes, and yes. That's it. Yes.
Thank you, Senator Turner. We appreciate your answer to that question. Next candidate, Senator Jeff Johnson.
That is a yes or no question. We could go into details if we want to analyze how we got to be concerned about the Mississippi case in front of the Supreme Court, but the answer is yes, I totally support the right to choose. As a state senator, I constantly got high grades from NARAL and my support for the rights of women to choose with no restrictions. I always have believed that I leave it up to the woman and whoever she brings into her circle to make the right decision. And I don't believe government should be involved with that decision. So I am concerned about the case that the Supreme Court has just taken. I'm concerned about what it will do, given the fact that we lost the late great Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it's not only do I support it, I'm willing as a congressperson to be very physically out there fighting inside and outside of Congress with it and for it.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Next, Rep. Barnes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. A woman's right to choose is something that she should have. Just imagine if those type of regulations were placed on a man and what the implications would be. And so they have choice. They should be able to make decisions. And yes, I think that federal law need to ensure that the Roe v. Wade, and that is being revisited by the United States Supreme Court at this time. I think we have to make sure that that women have access to that type of care. So the answer is yes and yes.
Thank you, Representative Barnes. I'll re-ask the question one more time just to ensure that the attendees present can recall, because it is a very lengthy one. So, do you believe everyone has the right to access abortion care legally in their community without regard to ability to pay, without stigma, shame, or delay, and medically unnecessary barriers? And the second part is, do you support federal legislation to ensure that right? Mr. Shabazz, you are next. Thank you.
All right, so I know everybody, it was pretty much a slam dunk for everyone here. It's gonna be yes, and it's gonna be a yes. So specifically talking about rights to access, far too often throughout the history of this country, it's been primarily driven by males dominating the entire narrative and argument of discussing what form of rights that any individual should have. And it's absolutely abhorrent that, again, that we have to have these type of discussions, but it's the reality. We have to be practical. So I, as the next congressperson, I will tell you right now, you have my support. You have my support twice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shabazz. Last but certainly not least, Councilwoman Chantel Brown.
Yes. And can I just say, that's really it. There's no additional thing that needs to be said as a woman. I appreciate my brothers trying to fill the space to make sure that they can articulate their support, but it was a simple yes and yes for me. But thank you, brothers.
All right, thank you, panelists, for answering question number 3. Now to Eric from the Cleveland Stonewall Democrats.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Meinhardt, and I'm going to be asking question 4. We continue to see anti-women and anti-LGBTQIA plus violence and discrimination in countries around the world. How should the United States position its foreign policy to support women's rights and LGBTQIA plus rights globally? And we will start with Mr. Tariq Shabazz.
All right, so I don't know how many people has actually listened to me talk about in terms of global studies or issues and whatnot, but I think this is a very important question in terms of conditioning, whether it's foreign military financing or in any other form or fashion, giving some economic assistance to a nation. I think it's absolutely imperative that as the next Congress member, of District 11, that my office always takes into account the best interests of not just the people of District 11, not just the people in America, but people throughout the world in terms of we should not be financing human rights violations. And I was one of the only candidates who did come forward and say, when we had a forum not too long ago, where I said multiple times that I believe any type of foreign military financing or any type of assistance, whether it's on an international level, we should have to have these conditions upon it, because they should be contingent upon what is actually being, what acts are being committed throughout the world. We cannot look ourselves in our face as America and we continue to keep saying that we're the home of the brave, land of the free, and then we're a contributing factor to destruction, despair, genocides, or whatever the case may be, so on and so forth, or the mistreatment of anybody, especially in terms of the fact that we're talking about the LGBTQI plus community. How can we say that we are Democrats who are Stonewall Democrats, or we're going to be Democrats who are going to advocate for the rights of the LGBTQI plus community, and then I, in the same sentence for foreign military assistance, I remove that doesn't matter? That would be very inconsistent for me. And as in my office, you won't see those type of things. Thank you.
All right, on to Representative John Barnes. How should the United States position its foreign policy to support women's rights and LGBTQIA plus rights?
The United States has to make sure that it articulate around the world, both with its diplomacy as well as funding, that hate in any form is unacceptable, that women's rights and LGBTQ rights are human rights, and they are therefore rights that are reflective of American society, and something that is extremely important for us to articulate and advocate, particularly in countries that is less sensitive to that. In these trying times that we're living in, there is a tremendous amount of discrimination and hate that is not only here at home, but around the world. And so we have to be unrelenting in our positioning and how we implement and formulate public policies that is going to ensure the rights of those individuals.
Next, Senator Jeff Johnson.
First of all, we should make it very clear that we have to lead by example. There are still so many issues within our country itself when it comes to us recognizing and respecting the rights of LGBTQIA plus as well as women. So as we go out to use the international bully pulpit, we also pulpit and being able to tell folks that we recognize that within our own home, we've got much to do. But we also lead by example. We have a UN ambassador, we have a woman head of intelligence. So President Biden is sending the signal that must be sent to empower women across the world. Just like we're talking about leaving Afghanistan, women are going to be major threats to them. I'm concerned about it myself. How we use funding, how we use technical assistance, how we are able to use leverage with our relationships. We have to be able to make it clear that women are to be treated equally and to be treated with respect. And that is not the case in many of these countries. Mutilations are still occurring with many women. You have cultures that allow for women to be killed. And so it is important that we go out and do that and use our funding for that. But also fundamentally, we have to also just take care of our home base much better. And given the culture of the growing conservative far right, we really have work to do here as well to be an example for the world.
Thank you. Next up, Senator Nina Turner.
Thank you, Eric. I mean, we definitely got to marry our principles with our practice, and that is definitely here at home and abroad. We also must make sure that for asylum seekers, especially in the LGBTQIA plus community seeking asylum to come to this country because they're being treated extremely poorly, their lives are in danger, the United States should be able to be a safe haven for them. The answer to this question is easy. It is to measure by humanity, what is best for humanity, and what is done in our name meaning the American people's name, again, should be measured by our principles and also our practice. And I don't think it is too much to ask for the countries that we give tax dollars to adhere to that or not get that money. That is vitally important. We got to lead on that, not just with our dollars, but also in having conversations and trying to bridge the divide in other nations where they don't treat both communities equally. That is not an easy job to do, but it is something that is important. This is wrapped in a type of righteous indignation and morality. When I mean that, I mean a love. This is about the love of humanity. In that way, I mean that in a very advanced and expressive, positive way about how we are supposed to use those dollars, how the United States of America should take a position in those ways to show that in practice and in deed that we're going to lead that way, and that we're also going to try to help bridge understanding in other communities as well. But that seeking asylum for being prosecuted should be number one on our list, for especially for our LGBTQIA community to be able to come to this country.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, Councilwoman Chantal Brown.
Thank you. So I too believe we have to lead by example first. You know, we have to put ourselves in a position where we can be able to express our authority, if you will, in a way with conviction, because we do have to strengthen our own treatment of the communities of the LGBT community, women, the Black community. I mean, we are a complicated nation made up of diverse groups of people, diversity of thought. And as it relates to foreign policy, absolutely leveraging the resources that we have in these particular matters would certainly be something that would not be off of the table. We have to leverage what we can to ensure that all people are being treated equally. You know, I think that that we are blessed to be able to live in this nation, but we should not disregard our fellow brothers and sisters across the country, across the world, who are struggling with issues that we may not necessarily have to deal with here on our own soil. So as the leader of the free world, we must demonstrate first our ability, and then as we demonstrate, then we can set the bar and set the standard and insist others do as we. It shouldn't be a do as I say, but do as I do policy as far as I'm concerned. So thank you.
All right, next up, we will pass it over to Brooks for our lightning round.
Before I do the lightning round, I just want to thank you guys again for being a part of this forum. It means a lot to both of our organizations that you guys are willing to come out and talk about issues that are so near and dear to us, and that, you know, we as a community are facing every day that often are pushed aside, like I said. So I really do appreciate that. So now we're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be quick lightning round questions. I have 5 questions. 4 are prepared, as I mentioned before, and 1 is actually from an audience member, which is exciting. So I'm going to go in the order that's on my screen, and then I will go back. So that's just how you guys know what it is. So the first question is, do you support passage of the ERA? Senator Turner? You're muted.
Absolutely.
Representative Barnes?
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Shabazz?
I absolutely support the Equality Rights Act. And if I was in Congress already, I would have voted yes on the House.
Senator Johnson?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, so I'm going to go backwards now. Senator Johnson, do you agree with the Supreme Court's Obergefell decision?
Yes. That's allowing for gay marriage to, that the 14th Amendment doesn't allow for discrimination for same-sex marriage. Yes.
We're just looking for yes or no question or answers.
Okay. Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Shabazz, do you support or do you agree with the Supreme Court's Obergefell decision?
Yes, yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Representative Barnes,
Yes.
Senator Turner.
Yes.
So this is a question that is from Barbara Danworth, who is an attendee watching right now. And her question is, should publicly traded companies be required to have a certain percentage of women on their boards of directors, as has happened in some European countries? Senator Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Shabazz,
I think that's a very interesting question, and I want to say that I agree with it, but we have to definitely look at the details of how it's implemented throughout the country. Thank you.
is that a yes or a no? I'm going to push you.
Yes, no, that's a yes. That's a yes.
Okay. Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Senator Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Barnes.
Yes.
Okay. Representative Barnes, do you support the repeal of the Hyde Amendment?
No.
Senator Johnson, do you support the repeal of the Hyde Amendment?
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Shabazz,
Yes.
and Senator Turner.
Yes.
And then our final rapid fire question is, do you support passage of the Equality Act? Senator Turner.
Yes.
Mr. Shabazz,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Senator Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Barnes.
Yes. And I have to correct my answer previously. The answer is yes. It was an error.
Okay. So I'm going to now turn it over to Crystal, who will be asking another question.
Hey again, guys. So question 5 is a mouthful again. I will make sure I say it really slowly. All right. Transgender people, particularly Black transgender women, are marginalized, stigmatized, and criminalized in our country. Here in the Ohio 11th Congressional District, we have one of the highest murder rates for Black transgender women in the United States. What will you do to stop this violence and protect our transgender and gender non-conforming siblings? All right. First person, Representative John Barnes.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I sure can, Representative Barnes. The question is, what will you do to stop the violence and protect our transgender and gender non-conforming siblings?
I think that we have to make sure that all of the loopholes in the law and how it's applied will work to ensure that individuals are not the recipient of hate crimes. These hate crimes are very bad, and it is extremely important that we recognize that the issues with women's rights, LGBTQ rights, is extremely important because I see them as human rights. And those human rights are important, and we must do everything at the federal level to ensure that on the local level, that there is a proper enforcement. And I think that it's important to add that there be some severe penalties for individuals who are engaged in that process. Furthermore, I believe that where there are instances where the local law enforcement has not engaged in that, we have to ensure that federal agencies get involved and recognize that under the category of hate crimes.
Thank you, Representative Barnes. I'll re-ask the question for the next panelist. What will you do to stop this violence and protect our transgender and gender non-conforming siblings? Mr. Tariq Shabazz, you're up next to answer. You are on mute, Mr. Shabazz.
All right, sorry about that. So in terms of the way to combat the transgender crime violence that has been arising for far too long in this country, as the next Congressman, number one, I definitely will push forward more to ensure that we recognize what these things are. These instances are, they're hate crimes. Number two, I want to see that we create more, the federal government, we position ourselves in a better way to utilize that carrot and stick approach as some of my colleagues used not too long ago in terms of the leveraging, but leveraging some things of our resources in a way to ensure that our state governments and state legislators, that their guidelines tend to coincide with the federal government's approach in terms of recognizing the rights of transgenders, and also in terms of calling on the Department of Justice as much as I can in terms of when we have these situations or cases that may arise that pertain to the specific event where we're seeing what it is, a hate crime. So for me, as the next Congress member, my job is going to be very simple. My vision is I'm going to fight to make sure that we remove these type of things from ever occurring in the first place. So that's also ensuring that we have a more robust discussion. And I think this isn't talked about enough, about understanding the differences in people and cultures, and understanding the fact that people in turn understanding the differences of what gender identity, what it really means, because we have a huge stigma where we can't even have a conversation throughout this country about it. So I want to make sure that I'm the congressperson who is not only just bringing you the policy, but I want to make sure I'm bringing more people into understanding a different perspective, a way that we can no longer go in this pathway. So again, it's to be education, making sure we have a better education system that applies this understanding, making sure that we are universally calling these things what it is, are hate crimes. These are hate crimes.
Thank you, Mr. Shabazz. Next, Councilwoman Chantel Brown, and please let me know if you would like for me to repeat the question.
Just the last part of it, Crystal.
No problem. 1 second, please.
You know what, you don't have to. This is something that I struggle with personally because I lost someone near and dear to me who experienced the abuse of living his life as a transgender woman, and was often abused. Uncomfortable to really share the truth about his identity. So it is an education issue, and it has really helped center and guide my thoughts around the community, because I know that what he struggled with, and I identify with him because I've known him knew him as a child. But my promise to him was to fight to make sure that the community would get the equal rights treatment that they deserve. We should not discriminate people based on their personal lifestyle or the way that God made them. And so for me, it is a very personal matter. We have to really put laws in place to deal with these discriminatory acts that are stealing people's lives, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So this is something that we owe it to each other to treat one another simply as what we are, which is human beings at our core. And so that is the struggle that I have right now, is that my friend was a human being and lost his life because somebody did not appreciate his differences and diversity. And that's really what this boils down to. This is a human rights issue. Those are hate crimes, and they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, but it's up to lawmakers to put those laws in place to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown, for your answer. Next, Senator Turner.
Thanks, Kristen. I think that the first part of that question, when you first asked it, you made an emphasis on Black transgender, if I'm correct. And I know that the transgender community overall suffers disproportionately, but it is especially Black transgender. And the intersectionality between gender identity and race. And a lot of this has its roots in historic bigotry and also white supremacy. And so we have to deal with that as a nation too. Yes, laws are one thing and they are vitally important. And I want to see transgender written into the law explicitly as the hate crime that it is, hate crimes against the transgender community more explicitly as the abomination that it is. But also on the other side of that is this is really about matters of the heart. And it is about how we have been socialized as a nation to see certain groups as the other, and that must stop too. So as we are pushing for the policy that puts the punishments and the guardrails in place to protect, we also have to have those deep-seated conversations within our community to make sure that all hearts and minds are clear, that when we talk about the nature of love and what it really does mean, that does transcend communities, and that has to be taken into account too. Laws are one thing, but how we treat each other is another thing. And so being able to be a bridge builder, building consensus, building understanding, because a lot of it is a lack of understanding on one level, and the other of it is, quite frankly, we've been socialized as a nation in this way. And it also is an example of the bad ways by which religion can be used. So just as religion can be used in a bad way towards people, we can also use it in a better and more powerful way as well. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That is the foundation of that. And we must do that from a community perspective, but also for a policy perspective. There must be consequences for bigotry and for discrimination in the United States of America.
Thank you, Senator Turner, for that answer. Last but certainly not least, we have Senator Jeff Johnson.
I think I've always believed as a public servant for 30 years that you lead by example. I think as a legislator for 23 years, it's been important for me to support laws as a foundation and then to educate along the way and enforce the laws of hate. For example, I stood as a Cleveland City Council member fighting for the transgender ordinance that took so long for City Hall to do, but was out there very beginning. You have to be able to go into the community, particularly those communities such as African-American community, that there still is a stigma when it comes to the issue of transgender. And so you provide the law, and I believe that there should be a national law that we can get passed, and we need to deal with the filibuster so we can get a LGBTQIA anti-discrimination law passed nationally and get it past the Senate. So that's what I would do, fight for the laws. And of course, most of the problem also is the enforcement at the local and state levels, the police officers, the prosecutors. We have to be able to force, to work the streets if we have to enforce laws. Title VII says that we cannot discriminate against the transgender and others members of the LGBTQIA plus community, but we have to enforce it. We have to fight for that right, even though we got it in the Bostock case. So I do believe it's about passing the laws and then educating and enforcing it and working every day to remove the stigmas that underlying the acts of violence. We have to be able to enforce it and make sure it's clear that when you cannot do this without us stepping forward as a government to enforce the rights of transgender citizens.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Now to Susan Palmer for the next question.
Thank you, Crystal. My first question is to Senator Jeff Johnson. How do you plan to increase economic opportunity for Black women in the district?
Well, first of all, recognizing that in our district, the economics swing from a poverty of about, when it comes to African Americans, somewhere in the 40% in Cleveland and about 35% in Akron. So you have to deal with poverty first and foremost. So let's raise the minimum wage. I was a big supporter of it when we tried to put it on the ballot in Cleveland in 2017. We didn't succeed because of powerful people pushed back. So you deal with the issue of also of helping to fight to build wealth, remove the barriers for Black women when it comes to the ability for them to be homeowners, the ability for them to get the capital and build their assets. You have to be able to provide that. Of course, the earned income tax credit, we've got to continue to support that, and the child tax credit, we have to make sure it goes beyond 2021, which is presently going on. It has a great amount of power to remove child poverty. And of course, when you talk about Black women, you have to talk about families as well. So I would support what President Biden wants to do, and that take the child tax credit all the way to 2025. And I would continue also to support minority and female businesses African-American women need to be supported with their entrepreneurial spirit. And I think you have to do that, and you have to be able to sustain that and support that and invest in underutilized neighborhoods where 2/3 of the households are led by Black women in the African-American community. And we have to recognize that when you invest in education, childcare, family leave, you're also empowering Black women, and you recognize their needs. So you have to deal with those issues holistically, and that's how we approach it.
Thank you. Representative John Barnes, same question. How do you plan to increase economic opportunity for Black women in the district?
I'm just talking. I think it's extremely important in an area in the city of Cleveland, where we are now the poorest large city in America, and East Cleveland, which is the poorest city in the state of Ohio, that we do an internal intervention of stakeholders so that we can identify the new job opportunities, employment, and also entrepreneurism. With all of the relief money that is coming into Northeast Ohio, we need to use that money to leverage opportunities for women and the entire minority community and all the citizens of the 107 different ethnic groups around. I think if we do it right, that money can be leveraged in a way that will help boost the growth of our economy and opportunities for African-American women.
Thank you, Representative Barnes. Senator Nina Turner, same question.
Thank you, Susan. To be able to use more of my time to talk, I will amen what Senator Jeff Johnson had to say. Just add to that. Canceling student debt. Canceling student debt is not just an issue that will help people who are among the working class in this country. It also has a race component to it. So it's a class and caste component to it. And because African-American community holds a large amount of that debt, but particularly African-American women hold the largest amount of student debt in the United States of America. One thing that we can do to help African-American women succeed and enhance their quality of life is by canceling that student debt. It is a racial justice issue. There is no reason why we cannot do it. By way of example, when President Trump gave a $1.7 trillion tax break to the ultra wealthy in this country, that is about the amount of student debt that is out there right now, about $1.7 trillion. That would go a long way in the African-American community, but particularly for African-American women. And then second to this, and there's no reason, executive order, many experts have said the president can sign an executive order right now. There's a debate between the $10,000 that he laid out, and I think Senator Schumer is talking about $50,000, and then the progressive movement is saying just go ahead and cancel it all. It is a race issue that will help Black women in particular, Black community as a whole, Black women in particular. And second to that is Medicare for all. We need to decrease the maternal death rate of Black women in this country who still die at higher rates. Black babies in the United States of America in the 21st century still die at higher rates. And we have people like Beyonce or also Serena Williams who are at the top of their game in their professions, but even they have had stories about how they are treated in this healthcare system. We must honor Black women and the lives that they live and lead through public policy.
Thank you. Councilwoman Chantel Brown.
I'm just amen what Sister Turner said. So, but seriously, really the work that I've done at the Cuyahoga County Council kind of speaks to many of these issues around Black businesses. As an entrepreneur myself, I know the struggle and the bureaucracy comes with access to resources, and it's great that we have an administration that is looking through the lens of equity, inclusion, and equality, and have actually taken steps to set up the resources to make sure women are not just employed, but employers, and making sure that they continue to be what they once were, which we recognize small businesses being the largest economic driver in our country. So we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place. But I think what's also important to this equation in are the relationships to be able to deliver those resources back into the district. Having worked closely with our Secretary of HUD, and as well as sharing the stage with Kamala Harris, our Vice President, not once, twice, but 3 times. I know that these are issues that they are equally familiar with and will certainly continue to champion from the administration level to make sure Black women are getting more than their fair share. In addition, I'd just like to point out a personal example. We had a $30 million contract on the table to deal with COVID compliance issues in our county. $15 million, that a contract was originally going to be awarded to all majority companies. It was my voice at the table that said, stop, we need to reevaluate this. And I'm grateful that my colleagues did. That contract was then split in half. 50% went to majority companies and 50% went to minority companies. This is the type of speaking truth to power that actually delivers results for the community, the people that we represent and that are entrusting us to make decisions on their behalf. And so I just hope that the people of the 11th Congressional District will trust me to do that at the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tariq Shabazz?
Okay, so everybody here who's listened to me talk multiple times in Ohio 11, I know some people been questioning, when is he gonna say it? First one is reparations. I don't know how we talk about equity, inclusion, and diversity if we keep removing the idea that reparations is one of the most ultimate forms of equity, inclusion, and diversity, because we're talking simply about what it say is reparative justice. And the reparative justice is about establishing more than just saying we're atoning for the sin and what you did. We're also rebuilding and promoting progress. So you will see a direct increase in Black businesses. You will see a direct increase in Black home ownership. You will see a direct increase in the wealth and a reduction in the racial wealth gap that we know has continued to widen since the inception of this nation. So myself as the next congressman, I don't want anyone to forget that, because I think a lot of times as candidates, we forget to say reparations. I don't know how we keep forgetting that one. But number 2, I will talk in depth that my colleague Nita Turner, she hit the nail on the head very hard about Medicare for all. I have been a huge supporter of Medicare for all. Number 1, we're talking about anyone, the people who question the financial aspect of it on the conservative spectrum, which would say the cost attributed to it. We would save up to $0.7 trillion, which was actually estimated by the Congressional Budget Office. Secondly, we have the ability to remove so many of the medical debts that's associated with bankruptcies. Why? Because we have now a current structure in place where every individual, imagine this, can go to the doctor and not have to worry about, wow, I can't pay for that ride that I just got here on. Now just think about those things right there. In another section of it, in terms of increased grants and things of that nature for individuals who may not apply under some of the other policies specifically. For small business owners, as my colleague, County Councilwoman talked about, we need to continue to increase in terms of grants, more funding, so we see a much larger imprint of Black-owned businesses, where we see communities.
Thank you. Thank you. Now to Dara Atkinson for our final question of the night. Dara?
Hi, actually, this is not the final question of the night because we're running a little ahead of schedule. So we've got time for an extra question from the audience after this one. So that is nice. And we always appreciate having that extra time if we can take advantage of it. So hold on, I'm also the timer. So let me reset this. All right, so our second to last question of the night. How do you define allyship? And how have you publicly demonstrated being an ally, both to women and the LGBTQIA+ community? And first, we'll hear from Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So I'm proud to say I was recognized by the Cleveland Stonewall Democrats for my allyship when we passed the Equality Act here in Cuyahoga County. Showing up and standing with my brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community, I think is definitive of allyship and being a voice and championing for the issues when you maybe don't have a seat at the table, but being a representative on your behalf is an important part of allyship. And as a woman, I certainly would expect that of my allies if I were not in the room. So allyship is, again, an extension and the voice and the support and really providing the platform for people's issues that may not be able to speak up on those issues for themselves. And if you have a place or space or platform to be able to do that for them, to be able to ensure that they are able to be afforded some of the privileges that our allies have, then to me, that is demonstrative of allyship. And as a woman, again, so I'm definitely, part of the minority quotient as it relates to women and being in spaces and places where I'm often the only woman and very often the only Black woman. So I understand what it is like to be in a place where you're either overlooked, underserved, or looked over. And so being able to really speak up and have that voice is something that I have been able to do with a tremendous amount of pride, no pun intended, but really a tremendous amount of pride, so that I can represent for those who aren't in the room. So that is what allyship is to me.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. And next, we will go to Mr. Shabazz. How do you define allyship, and how have you personally been an ally?
All right. Number one, I want to say this is very important. Again, having this conversation in terms of allyship, I think a very big portion of it is having the willingness to educate yourself. Because I think, again, this is something that I've glossed over earlier a little bit. The fact of the matter is that I don't think that we're actually actively having these discussions and this open dialogue enough. And when we tend to have that dialogue, we can get a better understanding of being more culturally sensitive. Because I know myself in my own past that I have made certain remarks that I thought or perceived were the correct way of saying something. And I recognized very early on, because I was willing to listen to someone to tell me that, hey, that may not be necessarily appropriate to say something in this manner or something like this, because I had to understand, because I'm not a part of the LGBTQI plus community, but that doesn't mean that I have to have a family member, a friend, or someone who's impacted by it for me to understand the needs and the resources that's being attenuated, the fact of the matter, the conditions that are holding people down within the community, as well as for women. Again, I'm telling everyone right now, I am a man, him. So saying this specifically right now in terms of in relationship to women's rights, and understanding that process as well too. When I said earlier that we're having many of these discussions dominated by individuals who aren't even being culturally sensitive enough to have a conversation with someone. And they're just making their decisions based off of whatever bigoted views that they've had, or whatever what medium that they watch the information through. So myself as an ally, I have consistently worked in diversity groups when I was in the military. Why? Because I didn't want to just go to diversity groups to go to them, because I actually genuinely wanted to learn. I genuinely wanted to be culturally sensitive and understand. So right now, and moving forward, like as I stated, I am willing to have 100% have a liaison for the LGBTQI plus community. Why? Because again, I want to make sure that my office is as culturally consistent and consistent all across the boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shabazz. All right, next, same question to Senator Johnson.
The way I define it is unequivocal public support, with the idea that you promote education, understanding, and acceptance. I particularly understand how important it is for me within my community, the African American community, to represent a position and be able to, without a doubt, reflect that. I'm a proud recipient of the PFLAG Bruce G. Cricht Community Award, for example, because I understand the importance of supporting LGBTQIA plus and their families and friends. So the way I believe is that I just stand for legislation, sponsor, co-sponsor, as I fought for the city to get off its butt and get it done for the transgender. I just think that the best thing I can do as a congressperson is to be very visible and to fight behind closed doors and to fight outside of the doors on behalf of the community, because I truly believe that it's all about having a society that is tolerant and fair and where we enforce laws equally. And that's how I see it.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Johnson. Next, Representative Barnes.
Allyship is extremely important because it helps to build coalitions around representing communities and getting people to participate and various activities that are important for society as a whole. This nation was built on the back of individuals that would come together and work together. As I was listening to some of the responses, I'm reminded to what a congressman said on the floor of the House of Representatives. He simply said, and I believe that this is reflective of how some people feel, that in this, no person wants to have a situation where they are deprived their rights based on not finding. Justice Ginsburg said that when you have advocacy, that you want to ensure that you develop it in a way where other people will follow. And that is how you build coalitions that are important. And we have to make sure that we come together and we work together, we build together and stand together around the idea of being the best Americans we can in this experimental society, and get it done with focus and purpose that is going to enhance the harmony of our community.
Thank you, Representative Barnes.
Oh,
And
I couldn't hear you.
oh, sorry, I'm not muted. Thank you, Representative Barnes. Next, we have Senator Turner.
Thank you. I mean, allyship for me is standing in solidarity with, and that solidarity must be definitely in words and also in deed. So, throughout my career, certainly as a state senator, I have co-sponsored and stood side by side with the LGBTQ plus community, not only just introducing legislation, but also, ensuring that we listen to the community first and push public policies that will make the change and make the difference in their lives. Also, on the women's rights side, I mean, I definitely won an award from NARAL for being a champion of choice. I think that was in 2014 when I won that award. But also, more importantly, fundamentally, this really is getting down to the humanity of it all. And that's why I see this as very simple. And it is an intersectionality that really we are talking about, that all communities, no matter how they identify, want to be treated, want to be respected, want to have dignity, and that crosses all identities. That's it, period. And so I have been a champion for all of that throughout my career and my life, and I will absolutely continue to do so. And also, allyship means listening, seeking first. Stephen Covey once said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. It also requires that if you are not a member of a certain community, that you seek first to understand and then to push that new information that you find out to make and be the change. Again, everybody wants to be treated with love, respect, and dignity. And when we keep it just that simple, it's not hard. It's not hard to get to where we need to be as a nation if we measure it that way. Now, from time to time, far too often, we're going to have to push policy to ensure that those things happen. And on the other side of that, it is about building a community of dignity, of love, and also of respect.
Great. Thank you, Senator Turner. And for our last question and closing remarks, now go back to Brooks.
So we have talked about some major issues tonight that require big ideas to solve. However, we look at Washington, D.C., where we hope one of you will be going, and we see this partisan gridlock that is stopping crucial legislation. So how will you work with people that you may not necessarily agree with on everything to try and get things done? So this first goes to Senator Johnson.
Okay. First of all, it's important that I have relationships within my own party. Even within our own party, there are disagreements. It would be important for me to not hold any type of grudges or anything. I need to get along with my fellow Democrats, even though we may disagree. I'm for the ACA with a with a public option, for example, versus Medicare for all, but I need to work with those who support it. When it comes to working with Republicans, I do have a history as a state senator for 9 years of working across the aisle. And so it's nice, it's understandable if you have history to understand how to interact and find a middle ground. And then there's times when frankly, there is not enough compromise, and principles should never be compromised. There's a line that's, for me, there's always been a line when it comes to policy, and my ultimate reason why I'm in public service for 30 years, and that is ultimately you have to represent the interests of the people. And even though it may take a little longer to get there, you never stray from that. And so it's going to be difficult. I'm a believer, for example, you get rid of the filibuster. You simply have 51 votes, and you should be able to get there. And so I would advocate for that when I go to Capitol Hill. But I also, it's very important for me to be able to communicate and to be able to have relationships, and also always know where that line is, that the people that I represent understands that. And I think I have a history of that. I've worked together with Republicans. I saved Central State along with other African-American legislators in 1997. So I have a history of it, and my commitment is to continue that when I go to Capitol Hill.
Representative Barnes.
The issues that, well, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How will you work with people that you may not necessarily agree with to get things done in Washington?
That's the business of politics. We have to come together and work together. Politics is about building relationships. It's about talking to people and not at them. It's about understanding where your audience is and how you can work with that audience of like legislators to get something done. I have been extremely effective in doing that. When I had to talk about poverty in the state of Ohio, I went to a friend and said, let's come together and let's get another $5 million so that we can put in the budget to help fight poverty. I'm reminded of a quote: "No one in the nation wants peace more than I. That I prefer the troubled oceans of war with all its calamity as opposed to a cool and putrescent pool of ignominious peace." That was an early 18th century member of Congress who spoke about how the British were infringing on the commerce of the United States. Everyone in this nation today has individualism that is focused on commerce and the result of impact of public policy that takes away the rights of people. And so we must work very hard to build relationships. As Einstein said, more knowledge, less ego. More ego, less knowledge. And we need...
Senator Turner.
You know, seeing a promise in the problem and finding ways to have opportunities to be able to find what we do have in common in that. And certainly as somebody that served in the Ohio legislature where Republicans certainly enjoyed super majorities, that was a training ground for how to try to break through gridlock. I think that if all parties, whether it's the Democrat or the Republican, center the American people, especially the most depressed, despised, marginalized people, the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class, we would have less gridlock. I certainly do have a record of working with people who I did not necessarily agree. And so for me, it doesn't matter if you're moderate, progressive, or conservative, as long as we are working towards a justice agenda. That those are ways that I will be able to work with people and not hesitate to be able to do so. It is important that we center the needs of our district, the needs of this state, and the needs of this nation above all other special interests. And to the point that Senator Johnson made about the filibuster, I want to take that one step further. Yes, we must get rid of the filibuster, but also the Democrats control all levers of power in both chambers of the Congress right now, and also the presidency. And so we have some Democrats we need to deal with, as well as particularly in the Senate, because the House of Representatives are actually passing legislation that will actually change the material conditions of people. So just even seeing in moments of gridlock that there is an opportunity to come to some consensus, as long as that consensus does not compromise the ultimate needs of the least of these in this country, I can work with people in that way.
Councilwoman Brown?
Thank you. I am pleased and privileged to say that during the most challenging, volatile, polarizing times in our history, I have demonstrated the ability to work across the aisle to get legislation passed. And again, not just symbolic legislation with words on paper, but really meaningful and impactful legislation around declaring racism as a public health crisis, where there are all Democratic communities that still struggle with getting this done. And so working across the aisle is certainly something that I not only am willing to do, but have done. And again, some of the most challenging times in our history. While I am the Democratic Party chairperson, I'm not so democratic that, again, I cannot find some common ground and attempt to build from there. We certainly have to get to a place where we are not, where we are really more focused on being good public servants than putting our partisan politics first. And I have demonstrated that, you know, when a constituent calls and they want to know where is the next food bank, when is the rental assistance program going to start back, they don't ask me, by the way, which side of the aisle do you sit on? People want to know that they have someone in the position that can deliver results back to the community. And that is my ultimate goal as the current county council representative, and hopefully as a federal representative, to be able to bring the resources back to the district. And so focusing on the needs of the people in this district, regardless of party politics, will be my highest priority. And again, having a relationship with the current administration, I think puts me in a very good position to be able to deliver those results for the people of the 11th Congressional District in both Akron and Cleveland. Thank you.
Mr. Shabazz. You're muted.
Could you repeat that question again really quickly?
Sure. My question is, how will you work with people who you may not necessarily agree with in Washington?
Okay, number one, I want everyone to understand a little bit about myself. Again, I served in the United States Armed Forces, so that means I have potentially very, very tough skin, because that means I can sit there and maintain my bearing, even if I relatively disagree with something someone of a higher rank has said something to me. I have that ability to do that, and also have a keen ability to be able to still work, conduct business, whether or not if I'm having an individual around me who are saying some things or spewing things that I feel may be very, very, very much so against my views or ideology. But the thing about this is, as my colleague, Mr. State Rep Barnes stated, in terms of it, this is the business of politics. This is my absolute job. My job is to be able to walk into the U.S. Congress, to still be that megaphone, to amplify the voices of people of District 11, to go in there and still having to have that ability to orate a policy, talk about testimonies on bills, look at these things and actually discuss these things in a manner that I can convince people to vote this way or vote this way. That's what ultimately what we keep forgetting is so important about that process, is that ability to go in there and actually discuss these topics in a way that you can actually convince more people, even reaching people across the aisle to vote one way or the other. And some other ways to exemplify that would also be, we've heard of the discussion of what is a vote for a vote. And again, when we talk about a vote for a vote, I will always say this as one of my ending remarks. I will always try to work to build a bridge to compromise, but I will not compromise my people in that process or the best interest of my people. So I will leave you all with that. Thank you.
So because we have just a little extra time, I know I said I wasn't going to give you guys closing statements, but I think that we have the time for it. So I'm going to ask you guys to just give some closing remarks for 2 minutes each. I'm going to start with Representative Barnes. You're muted.
Want to thank participating organizations for pulling together a forum this evening that I think is important, and it is relevant for the times. And given the consequence of so many things that is going on throughout the nation and the world, and its implication on both the women's rights movement and the LGBTQ community. I want you to know that I am committed to stand with you, to work with you, listen to you, and learn how we can advance forward and get things done for that community. Many of us who have family members that are part of those communities have to find ways of building a better tomorrow around trying to identify public policies that will help enhance and have a fair, equitable existence in our society, the American dream. And so I'm absolutely committed to that. And I think moving forward that it would be wonderful I hope that I'm on your mailing list, and I would like to come and listen firsthand to some of the comments that people are experiencing out there, so that it will work towards our own personal edification moving forward. Thank you again, and I certainly appreciate the important work you are doing on the issue of human rights.
Thank you. And I will take that opportunity to let you guys know that the Stonewall Democrats have their meetings on the third Thursday of every month, and we are always welcome new members and candidates. So now I'm going to have Councilwoman Brown give her closing remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to discuss very important issues. Those are, again, are very near and dear to my heart. This is a subject, these subjects that we have discussed today are certainly things that I have championed in my current capacity, and things that I certainly are more than willing and honored to be able to continue to champion at the federal level. I think that we need a representative in this seat that has the courage of a Louis Stokes, who demanded that we have reflective representation in our government, and I have done that. I think we need to have someone with the connection to the community that can walk into any room, from the hood to the heights, from the streets to the suites, and have a seat at the table to make sure that we are not on the menu. And again, I have done that. And I think we also need someone who has the compassion, the character, and the competency to be able to deliver policy in a way that is both compassionate but compelling, and with conviction. And I have done that. This is an opportunity for us to really transform the landscape of the future, not only in the area of the 11th Congressional District, but on the national level. You have a champion in me that really embraces the issues and in so many ways understands them on a personal level. And so it is my hope that I could have the honor and the privilege of representing the people of the 11th Congressional District in the way that I have done at the county council level, that has awarded me recognition from both organizations. So I thank you for recognizing my achievements in the past, and hope that I can continue to make you proud and earn your support in the future. Thank you very much.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you. I want to thank again our sponsors, Stonewall Democrats, who I've known for many years, as well as the Cuyahoga County Democratic Women's Caucus. I appreciate the past support that has been given me during my public service career. I have been very much on the front lines of public service, and I hope when you're looking at the next congressperson who is following three wonderfully prepared and talented individuals. As an attorney, I am prepared to as well go to Capitol Hill to start from day one. I've served in all three branches of government as a member of Jane Campbell's cabinet, as a director, as well as right now the court administrator of the Cleveland Housing Court. And of course, I've served 14 years as a Cleveland City Council member. And then 2 levels of government where I served as well as the state level and the local level, 9 years with the state Senate. So it's natural for me now, as being as prepared as I am and qualified as I am to be able to then go and go to Capitol Hill, start from day one. But the relationship with the LGBTQIA plus community is one that I have taken very seriously over the years. I've tried to be that elected official who not only spoke it behind closed doors, but very visible, as well as women's issues. It is clear that we still have glass ceilings and sticky floors when it comes to women. 83 cents per, 83 cents versus $1 when it comes to earned wages. So we have to change that. I want you to know that that would be part of my priority, is to really go and deal with families, help to be able to remove inequities in our society, and be able to reflect and make you proud, as the last 3 congresspersons have. Again, as an attorney, as someone with 3 college degrees, I'm ready to serve. I'm prepared, I'm proven. Thank you very much.
Mr. Shabazz.
So for everybody out there who's been watching this whole time, I'm talking to you, you the people, you the people, you the people, and not the politicians. I am Tariq K. Shabazz. I am asking for you, respectfully requesting your one vote on August 3rd, 2021. I am running for the people's house. I want to be your megaphone. I want to make sure that you no longer feel voiceless. I want to make sure that when you think about your federal government, you can sleep tight, you can sleep warm at night knowing that, okay, Tariq K. Shabazz has the watch. Just like I had the watch when I was in the military. Just like when I stood those watches when so many people were sleeping, I stood that watch. And I want everyone to understand what is this all about. I want you all to know I have the watch for you. That when you walk away from me, I'm not going to just pander to you. I'm going to go into that room and actually go discuss the policy. I'm going to make sure that these issues are actually addressed. I want people to understand something very big, something very different. We needed to be doing things fundamentally different. I know I'm the youngest individual in this race, but I don't want anybody to misconstrue the fact that when I get in Congress, that somehow I would be a willful idiot or someone is going to essentially try to manipulate me. No, in no way, shape, or form. Because why? Because I stand for something. I stand for progress. So when you see a Tariq K. Shabazz as your next Congress member, imagine a whole fleet of so many young individuals coming into these districts and winning so many of these state legislators, winning so many of these things to actually overturn some of these laws that have been so discriminatory in nature. I am ushering in a new era. That is what we're fighting for right now. This is not just a campaign. This is a call to action. This is time for change. I will fight for reparations, Medicare for all, and I absolutely support the Equality Rights Act. And I will fight for women's and excuse me, for health rights and human rights. I'm sorry, I'm messing my terms up. But there you go. I would like to be your next congressman. Please vote for me August 3rd, 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And then Senator Turner.
Thank you so much, Brooks. And I want to thank the Stonewall Democrats and the Women's Caucus too for hosting this event. You know, from the Stonewall Rebellion to this very moment, you know, what we are fighting for is for humanity and equality for both women and the LGBTQIA community as well. It is vitally important that we have someone that goes to Congress that has the courage to ask for more, somebody who understands that working with does not mean acquiescing to, somebody who understands that we must continue to put the needs of the people of this district first, and that should be measured, absolutely measured by the least of these, our sisters and brothers in this community. And I do understand both from relationship and also from experience, that those who are suffering the most need the champions to be right there for them and standing by their side. And for this community, for these 2 communities in particular, we know that we have a history in this country of that kind of discrimination and bigotry that must be dealt with on the policy level, but also must be dealt with in the hearts and minds of humankind. And so I am going to Congress to continue to be that champion, to stand up for the rights of those who are not necessarily voiceless, but their voices have been muted. And that is from a policy perspective, but that is also from a grassroots perspective. I am happy to have the endorsement of Senator Nikki Antonio and what she stands for in the legislature right now and how we have worked side by side. Most importantly, I want your endorsement and your support to be able to go to Congress, to stand up for this district and to strengthen the ties that bind us ultimately the intersectionality between the LGBTQ community and the women's community is the intersectionality of all communities in terms of the basic human rights, the need for dignity at work, play, the need to make sure that we have healthcare for all, the need to make sure that
Thank you,
everyone
Senator Turner.
lives a good life.
So on behalf of the Cleveland Stonewall Democrats and the Cuyahoga Democratic Women's Caucus, I want to thank the candidates and the audience tonight for joining us to discuss these crucial issues. Remember, if you are not a member of the Cleveland Stonewall Democrats or a member of the Cuyahoga Democratic Women's Caucus, but you want to join in this fight, please go to clevelandstonewalldems.org and cuyahogadwc.org to join us today. The special primary election for the Ohio 11th Congressional District is on August 3rd, 2021. Do not forget to vote. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You all be safe.
Brooks, you did an awesome job.
Oh, thank you.
Bye, guys.